Coaching as Benevolence, a podcast for people who are curious about using coaching for self-development. I'm Eryn with Roots and Wings Grief and Loss Coaching.
And I'm L Shawn with Michelle Sage Place Positive Intelligence Coaching.
So L Shawn and I are recording this podcast today with me being in a different location. I'm on the road to visit family, traveling with my two daughters and my husband, and we are seeing quite a few sites and have encountered some mind-blowing facts at a museum. And it really got me thinking about what is the difference between appreciation and gratitude, and how do these show up in our lives? And it's easy for both of them to be so profound, when I'm in the middle of this museum and seeing dinosaur fossils and learning about black holes and things like that, to really ground into appreciation. So I got even more curious about that then, because what I have read and have some understanding of is kind of gratitude is our root to appreciation. So we're going to just explore this concept to see, where L Shawn and I land on what the differences and similarities are between gratitude and appreciation, as well as how that shows up for ourselves and our clients, and any tips and tricks we know for bringing those out more fully in our lives. So with that, L Shawn, how do you want to start the conversation between gratitude and appreciation?
This is an interesting idea, appreciation and gratitude. Some people might see them as the same. And quite recently, I had a similar conversation about gratitude and appreciation. It was a group of people that I meet with online who study the teachings of Abraham Hicks, which is around the law of attraction. And one of the things that they talk about with law of attraction is one should appreciate, not show gratitude. And the reason why they say this is that it gives this impression that, or like maybe vibrationally, gratitude is like, I've overcome something, or there's a sense of lack there. And this is what's really interesting about the way that they see gratitude. But appreciation is more of an acknowledgement of what's good. For example, appreciating something is acknowledging the value of it, or acknowledging that it is something that you want in your life, something that brings joy to you, or that brings positive, pleasant feelings. And so you appreciate it. Whereas gratitude, from their perspective, is more of hard won, or something that is something that you look at because of something that happened in the past that maybe you didn't have, and now you have it. And so you're grateful for it, and you have gratitude. Now, that is, I think, an unusual look at it. But from my perspective, when I think of gratitude and appreciation, I often think about how appreciation is also related to the financial term appreciation. When something appreciates, it increases in value. When I think of appreciation, when I say I appreciate that, or I feel appreciation for, I feel like it's a way to increase its value by saying that I appreciate it, rather than that I'm grateful for it, that I have gratitude for. That's what comes up for me when I think about the difference between gratitude and appreciation. I would like to explore more about other definitions out there, other concepts, and especially, Eryn, what I would like to talk about with you, and just to kind of get a little bit more of your thoughts behind what you said earlier about gratitude being a jumping off place, or a starting place to appreciation. What more can you say about that?
Yeah, I am struggling with it a little bit, because as I was in the museum, I started to feel what came to my mind, a sense of appreciation that led to gratitude. However, this resource, Happier Human, says that gratitude is the root to appreciation. So it's kind of complex and confusing. And then when you look up just like standard definitions of appreciation, I get recognition and enjoyment of the good qualities of someone or something. And then right underneath that, gratitude. And then when you define gratitude, it says the quality of being thankful, readiness to show appreciation for, and to return kindness. Both of these words are in each other's definitions, which I think makes it challenging. And also this idea of showing appreciation seems to be a little bit more profound than showing gratitude. However, you can show gratitude as well. The other thing that comes up for me is one of the strengths in one of the personality assessments is appreciation of beauty. And I don't think gratitude or gratefulness is on that list of personality strengths. So I am a little bit more curious as to why appreciation shows up in those personality assessment spaces, maybe a little bit more than the word gratitude. When you appreciate something, at least in my experience, I have a feeling of warmth in a way and a feeling of awe that I don't necessarily have in gratitude. So the feeling that the word appreciation evokes within me is different than the feeling that the word gratitude evokes. However, from a coaching lens, appreciation rarely comes up. And it's really having this conversation is really helping me see the benefit of it maybe coming up a little bit more in our coaching conversations than gratitude, because we often may talk about people's views on gratitude and how it can be helpful or healthy depending on how it may work for them. But it's rare that that comes up in a coaching conversation, appreciation in the same way. So, I'm curious why coaching training programs, maybe employ gratitude a little bit more than appreciation. I will say at the museum, I felt a lot of appreciation and gratitude. It was one of the secondary pieces there. So those are my thoughts. Shawn, where are you at in terms of maybe continuing to work through these definitions and then also in the coaching lens as well?
I like how you differentiated appreciation and gratitude based on how you feel when you are thinking about or engaging in either. I feel like appreciation for me is more of, you mentioned awe, and I think it's maybe a more spiritual feeling. It is like when one appreciates, it's like a reverence. It's it's a recognition of goodness. It's a recognition of the essence of something. Whereas when I think of gratitude, I think of it in terms of give and take. So for example, if you give me something, then I'm grateful for that, or things that I have, or things that happen, or my blessings, that kind of thing. We might think more about gratitude. So for example, if we have a gratitude journal, and going back to coaching and techniques and tools that we use, when we want to engender a feeling of calm or pleasant feelings for our clients, one of the things that we can play around with in the coaching space is the idea of a gratitude journal, where you list the things you're grateful for. And again, there is a sense of a give and take. There's a sense of, I'm getting something from this, so I'm grateful for it. If someone gives me a gift, I say thank you, or I'm grateful for the gifts that I have. Whereas appreciation seems more, and this goes into the idea of being, of existing, just the essence of something. Nothing has to be exchanged or done. It is a chance for us to stop and take in the beauty. And again, I want to go back to what you said about the awe that we feel when we take in the beauty of our surroundings, of our life, and we appreciate it. And for me, when I think about appreciate, I think of just taking the time to allow myself to experience that feeling of connection, that feeling of calm, that feeling of joy that comes with appreciation. And then when I think about gratitude, it's almost like I have to kind of make a list of things, what am I grateful for? What do I have that I'm grateful for? Somehow giving me some benefit. Both benefit us. I want to make that clear, that both are recognition of benefits, things that benefit us, things that we place value on. But for some reason, for me, when I think of appreciation, it evokes in me, like with you, a different feeling. And I would say that maybe gratitude and appreciation are both valuable experiences to have, or things to have. And I think that I would also agree with you and the article or whatever that you referenced, that gratitude and appreciation, they're somehow part of each other. Gratitude is the foundation, and appreciation is something more, an expansion of gratitude. I don't know. What are you thinking, Eryn?
Yeah, I like going back to that coaching gratitude journal that you mentioned and thinking about us as coaches, as professionals, as humans, considering appreciation journals. I haven't really, used that as a method. And the reason why I say that is not to force anybody into a appreciation practice, but to acknowledge that feeling that comes along with appreciation, the feeling that, we both have been highlighting, that sense of awe and kind of wonder and understanding of beauty and that sort of thing. And so I like this idea of us maybe tapping into the feeling side of these words, because that is also where we can make changes in our life when we start to recognize how we feel. I think the gratitude journal as a practice is this habit that is meant to increase level of well-being, increase that sense of awe, increase just everyday, livelihood, that sort of thing. And so when you couple in the appreciation, I see that might enhance the gratitude journal piece, or enhance our ability to access gratitude as well. And I mean, I think obviously we need both. And how I mentioned, there's gratitude was the root in this one website. And then for me at the museum, it felt opposite, but it almost feels like they coexist in a lot of spaces. At the museum, I went automatically from appreciation to gratitude. And it makes me even more curious as we're having this conversation, that it seems like we really cannot uncouple these two items very well. Why has appreciation in the positive psychology well-being world gotten the same light as gratitude? So that's a question I have, and I haven't had a chance to explore that enough. And I will hopefully get a chance to do that after this podcast recording, because I am curious about that a little bit more. But I'm struggling to find a path through where I can say that that they can be fully uncoupled. I don't know. LaShawn, do you have experiences where you have only felt or expressed gratitude, or have only felt or expressed appreciation?
I haven't. If I'm feeling a certain way, let's say low or just annoyed by life in general, and I want to really quickly shift from that feeling of disappointment or feeling not so good about life, then I usually use gratitude as a very quick way to shift my mood so that I feel better. One thing that as you were talking, that I was thinking about how is this showing up for me? How is gratitude and appreciation showing up for me? And how it's showing up for me is when I am sitting down and thinking about all the wonderful things in my life, that feels more like gratitude, where I'm like taking stock and I'm counting my blessings, that kind of thing. And then what that does for me is I start out with, I'm grateful for my children. I'm grateful for the opportunity to do what I do on a daily basis. And then what ends up happening is that builds into just a feeling of appreciation, which manifests in a way that's just a very calm, again, I want to say connection. It's a connection to all things. It's a feeling of being part of a bigger picture, being part of something bigger than myself. That's why I think that appreciation is akin to a spiritual experience or spiritual feeling. And I think that gratitude is like the door that leads to that. It's, for me, when I start with gratitude, with what I'm grateful for, there's an opening up. There's an opening up, and there's this, it goes from like discrete points to just this whole encompassing emotion, feeling. And the only way that I can describe it is it's just an overall feeling of joy and peace and centeredness. It's a very grounded feeling for me. And then those little things, not little, don't say little things, but those specific things, those discrete points just kind of melt away. And it becomes, for me, this feeling of, yeah, I'm part of something. I'm part of something good. I'm part of something that transcends time and transcends all of the different barriers that we place, the social barriers, the physical limitations that we deal with on a daily basis. And it allows me to kind of transcend that. And that's how I feel of appreciation. And appreciation for me is also related to love. And that feeling of appreciation almost always for me brings in that pure love, unconditional love that gives me comfort and also gives me encouragement and allows me to go through my day with, buoyancy. And so that's how it manifests for me. And I would agree with you. I don't think, as far as I know, it's possible to really uncouple the two. I think that gratitude, appreciation, love, those are all, maybe gratitude and appreciation are all manifestations or forms of love or gateways to love, or I don't know. What are you thinking, Eryn?
Oh, I love this direction in which you're going with love. It reminds me of, is it A Return to Love by Marianne Williamson, one of her earlier books. And yeah, love is this root, these elements as well, but also it's kind of paradoxical because, gratitude and appreciation are potential gateways to love. And as you were talking, I could feel that. I could feel that beyond just the feeling of gratitude. There was something more there, and that feeling of love. So I think that's really empowering and beautiful space that this takes us to, because these are all free, right? Like these are all spaces we can get to by channeling gratitude and appreciation. And so that's really cool. I did have a question as you were talking. I was just a little bit curious about your gratitude practice and just maybe a brief summary of how you got to that point in your life, and maybe something, a tip or something you can share with the listeners about, how to use gratitude and make that a part of one's life.
Gratitude has always been a part of my life. I have always been called to acknowledge when someone does something that I think is kind, or I always want to acknowledge that. That's been a thing since as long as I can remember. But something that really comes to mind, I was reading, and I don't know, it was Maya Angelou, and I think it was her autobiography. I was reading it, and she was talking about this time when she went to her mentor. She told her mentor, I don't want to live anymore. She basically confessed to her mentor that she was considering suicide. And what her mentor said was, and this is so profound, told her to stop because she was talking about all the things that she was going through, all of the reasons why she didn't want to live. And he started with like the simplest little thing. He said, I want you to repeat after me. I can see, thank God. And he just went through all of these different things that she was taking for granted, her ability to breathe, her ability to see. And what she said in her writing was that this allowed her to reconnect to reasons to live. And what was really interesting is it wasn't a lofty thing. It was just gratitude. Her mentor stopped her, and he didn't even say, I acknowledge that you're in pain. He just said, stop, repeat after me. I am breathing, thank God. I can see, thank God. I can do this, thank God. And he just went through this like list of things for her to be grateful for. And that really struck a chord for me, because at the time when I read her autobiography, and I wish I knew what it was called, but what was it? Oh, I can't remember. Anyway, or maybe it was a letter to my daughter. I can't remember, but I was reading it, and I was in deep depression at the time. And I believe my mentor recommended that I read this book because I was emailing her, and I was living in Japan at the time. I was really, really struggling with finding joy in my life and just really struggling. And she said, read this. So I read it. And I just remember after reading that piece saying, okay, when the chips are down, when it feels like my life is falling apart, when I feel like I just want to end it all, I should just be grateful for these little things. The fact that I can breathe, the fact that I can see, the fact that I have all of my limbs and fingers and toes. These are things that we take for granted, and it's easy to forget that these are miracles, that these are beautiful, wonderful things. And when we're in pain, it's a way to turn and to change our focus. And I think that's what her mentor was doing in that moment. He was switching her focus from what she lacked to what she had. And that again comes
Yeah.
back to how gratitude, is like what you lack but that's what started my gratitude journey, my intentional gratitude to when I'm low, when I'm not appreciating what is, then I go to that. I go to, okay, thank God I'm breathing. Thank God, thank God I can walk. Thank God I can write. Thank God I can pick up the phone and call my friends if I'm really in a lot of pain. So those are the things that's one poignant moment in my life where I was reading that, and she's such a powerful writer and
Yes, she is.
really raw and authentic. You really feel it. And I was just feeling to myself, I was like, yeah, I've been in that spot, and now I have something to hold on to, some anchor that's going to help me shift from that really dark, dark place where I just don't want to do it anymore. I don't want to fight anymore. I don't
Mhm.
want to try anymore, whatever whatever story I'm telling myself, to just stop and start listing the things I'm grateful for. So that's how my gratitude journey started. How about you, Eryn? Do you have anything that comes to mind?
Yeah. Yeah. And before I talk about that, I want to revisit a few of the things that you said because it relates to our previous podcasts on perspective shifting. And that is exactly what you just highlighted. This is a practice that helps you get into the space of perspective shifting. And then the other thing, you brought up the word stop, that my Angelo's mentor said stop. And then you brought that up for yourself as a word, stop. And then this museum experience was a stop for me on this journey, right on this trip, but also just a reset. And I think that's another strategy here that I want to highlight, that when we shift into this perspective, um, we kind of sometimes need a space to be able to do that. And sometimes that comes naturally. And sometimes that's not as natural. And it may require getting out of one's comfort zone or stopping and trying something different, going back to that perspective shifting, or looking at things from a different perspective, or even going to a different location, or taking a stop and going on a hike, or taking a stop and grabbing some coffee. And I think that's an accessible word to use in the workplace if you need to take a break, at home with your kids, wherever you are. Just this idea that you can pause or stop, switch things up, and then enter into a new space of feeling and thinking. So I like both of those points that you made. For me, gratitude, I think, has always been instilled in me from a young age in terms of writing thank you cards. That was a practice that I've had since childhood, and I typically continue with. And it doesn't stop there, but I think thank you cards are a way to show appreciation, really. I don't know. So that's making me think, does a thank you card show gratitude or does it show appreciation? But anyway, I'm kind of sidetracking. For me, gratitude is something that I tend to latch on to when I see something inspiring. Like the word inspire comes to my mind. And oftentimes that's outside of myself in terms of like a piece of artwork or a fact that I heard, or an idea. So I guess it's very cerebral. It's very cognitive, and it just really kind of helps me shift, help me stop to then express gratitude, feel gratitude, show appreciation, those sorts of things. So that's where I find gratitude showing up in my life the most. I struggle to use gratitude as a practice consistently when I am in those dark spaces or in those really hard spaces. Um, it isn't the pathway that I often rely on, and I've tried, and I don't know what the clear block is there at that moment. Um, so without getting into, too much detail of those situations and thinking about it, I'm I'm not sure how I used gratitude in some really tough times initially. I think what happens is I get out of those. I find it a spiritual experience, and how I don't know, get out of some of those hard spaces. And then I feel like I access gratitude a little bit more easily for myself. But it's really hard for me to like figure out where that is. So, needless to say, I can't answer your question completely, but I do find that it's an important practice to have. And I think that it's also one to play around with. I mentioned in a much earlier podcast episode how I tried the daily gratitude journal practice and that didn't really work for me. But for me, it's something that I do in my mind and in holding gratitude consistently throughout the day. That works for me better. And so it's really just trial and error in terms of finding what works for each other, and whether that's in a coaching setting or even talking this through with your friends. um yeah, that's something that can be helped in terms of trying to better understand oneself.
I like what you said about stopping and the pause. That's so important. Disrupting that narrative that we have, disrupting behaviors that don't serve us is probably one of the first things that we should practice doing is just stopping. With Maya Angelou and her mentor, when he said stop, I think that's a really important thing to remember when we are practicing perspective shifting, because we know that our brains can only really focus on one thing at a time. Multitasking is switching quickly from one thing to another, but it's not focusing on multiple things simultaneously. Our brain cannot do that. So knowing that our brain can focus on the negative, but not the positive so much, knowing that we need to disrupt that pattern is so important when we are wanting to shift perspectives. So I'm really glad you brought that up. The other thing that I noticed from what you were saying, or what I observed was, or something that came up for me was, it's not one size fits all. It's not like gratitude journals is not a panacea for everyone. And that's one of the things that I've learned in my training as a coach and my experience coaching others. It certainly is not one size fits all. It's very individual. And I want to normalize that, to use a term you used before. Normalize the idea that gratitude journals might work for person A, but it's not going to work for person B. It's not going to work for person C. What's important is to explore different strategies, different avenues, and find out what works for you. For you, Eryn, you said gratitude journal wasn't really working for you. However, holding gratitude in your mind throughout your day does. That's great. We should continue to do the things that work for us and not beat ourselves up when, there's this new thing or this old thing that people say, like meditation. That's another thing. Meditation, it may not work for everyone. There are other ways. There are other ways to find peace. There are other ways to find centeredness and to be grounded. It doesn't have to be through meditation. So one of the things that I often encourage my clients to do in coaching is, let's explore different things and what is working for you and what really lights you up, what interests you, what piques your curiosity, what is going to ignite you and inspire you, to use your word that you used before. That's how we can tap into practices that are going to work for you. I think that's so important to remember. And I know we're kind of taking a detour here, but I think it is also part of gratitude and appreciation. Gratitude may be something that is a good starting point for some. Appreciation might be something that people really resonate with, or a person might resonate with. But either way, it's going to lead to an increase in your sense of well-being. We know this. There are studies on this, that showing gratitude, practicing gratitude, existing in a state of appreciation really does increase your well-being. And something that I heard recently is that your neural pathways, if you include fun and excitement in something that you learn for the first time, I believe it's something like you have to repeat something 200 times before it really, makes that connection and really creates a very strong neural pathway. But if you do it with joy and fun, it takes like 10 or something like that. Don't quote me on that, but it takes a lot fewer repetitions. So that's important to know, that when we are in a space of gratitude, when we're in a space of appreciation, when we're in a space of love, things move a lot faster and they're deeper, and it's a lot more enjoyable than when we're pushing ourselves, when we're beating ourselves up. That makes it harder for us. And that's something to really take into account. It's very interesting, the turn that this conversation has taken. It gives me a sense of how gratitude and appreciation are kind of gateways or doors opening up into something higher or something bigger. Because, where our conversation has gone really shows me that there's a lot that comes up when we think about gratitude and appreciation.
Yeah. One of the things that I heard you say too, and correct me if I am misrepresenting this, but this idea of gratitude and appreciation leading to, or at least helping us get in that flow state, or there's a sense of ease, like you said, where we can exist maybe a little more freely and kindly, but also focused, right? Like these kind of words that you don't associate typically with gratitude and appreciation. But I think there is that link that then leads to, like you were talking about, more of this flow, and you do get more maybe focused action and contentment as an individual too. So you summarized this so beautifully on how these words open us up to something greater. And so, we've highlighted that is, or you initially highlighted that is love, and then the flow and ease, and then kind of our thinking capacities. We see that these practices and these words have significance in all of our lives. And really, I think I'm starting to circle in just kind of on coaching nugget of wisdom, and thinking about the fact that these words, while they are very similar, when you can start to deconstruct them a little bit, it may be a pathway into finding how you yourself want to embody them. And I think that's how we got to this word, or LaShawn initially brought up the word of stop as far as the mentor in Maya Angelou's story, but even stop as a strategy by exploring these words. That's one strategy that I want to use a little bit more in trying to kind of disrupt how I'm thinking or feeling or looking at something, and simply just move away from my desk for a moment or go on a quick walk, those sorts of things. So I kind of gave two nuggets of wisdom there. LaShawn, what are your thoughts?
My coaching nugget of wisdom would be an invitation, very similar to what you said, Eryn, to really take the time to see what gratitude feels like, what appreciation feels like, and how does it manifest? How does it show up in your life? Find out. And another thing that I would invite our listeners to do is to think about what helps them feel a good sense of well-being, or that helps them be open to that uplifting feeling of appreciation and gratitude. and encourage you to practice that in your life, however that shows up. Thanks for joining us for Coaching as Benevolence. I'm LaShawn with Mayshell Sage Place, Positive Intelligence Coaching.
And I'm Eryn with Roots and Wings, Grief and Loss Coaching.
Have a benevolent day.